There we go. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my work, and I work a lot with dreams, the kind you do at nighttime, art, and healing. I bring those three together, and that's what I'll be talking to you about today, and how the role the book arts have played in that. So, oh dear, it blocked out my name. Well, I am Asato Sheila, or Sheila Asato. Asato, for those of you who don't know, is an Okinawan name. So my husband is from Naha, Okinawa. And so there he is. Some of you may know him from the Japan America Society. So my husband Satoru, our eldest son Hiroshi, Satoshi, who we adopted while we lived in Japan, and we just had a feature article in the Japan Times about Satoshi as an example of a Japanese national who decided to live full-time overseas and has been successful. Sachi has autism, and he was able to get the services he needed here in the States. So we all moved back to the States, and he's doing very well. And then myself at our New Year's lunch at our favorite JK's table in the Twin Cities. So I'm a teaching dream artist, and my studio is in St. Louis Park. I originally opened it in Urayasu, Japan, which Ben Van Leerup knows well, having lived there as well. I founded it in 1994, and originally the name was Saruhashi Bijitsu. And the goal was to bring together people using their hands, so making art, and sharing their tales, their stories, so to make connections with people across cultures, across different language groups. And I continue to do that in the Twin Cities here. So I originally trained as a painter, and this is a painting from my last exhibition in Tokyo before we moved back to the States in 1999. And at that point, I was doing a lot of mixed media, trying to push the boundaries between what I had learned about making art in the United States at Gustavus and the Boston Museum of Fine Arts School, and what I had learned in Japan, being the apprentice to a Zen calligrapher when I went over there in 1979 to attend Kansai University of Foreign Studies. Well, when I was there, I fell in love with washi, and that brought me back to wanting to learn how to make my own paper. So these are examples of papers that I've made from things in my own garden here in Minnesota. And an example of a book I made here. This is called Piano Hinge Binding, where I use sticks from my garden to create the spine of the book, and then flax and plants from my garden to make the pages of the book. So people always ask me, do you speak Japanese because of your husband? And it's actually no, I speak Japanese because my first lover is washi. I love Japanese paper, and that's what brings me back all the time. So in the book arts, one of the things I found when I was living in Japan is a lot of the traditional art forms are not framed or under glass. You have them on byobu, on a screen, or on a scroll. So there's none of that glass interfering with our relationship with the work. And it's much more intimate. Like people will hold art more often, like opening a scroll together. So that was part of what drew me to the book arts. I wanted to get off the wall and get away from the frames and the glass and see if I could create art that people could hold and touch with their hands. And this is an example of a book I made with a kind of French binding that's made up of old calligraphy practice papers that then afterwards I did a lot of watercolor on and playing with sumi and other brushes. And inside this book, I created a lot of pockets that have little blessings in it. And I thought this one was especially appropriate for all of us during COVID right now. So I'll just read it. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but to do at last what I came here for and waste my heart on fear no more. That's my blessing for all of you today. And if you don't know John O'Donoghue, he's a wonderful Irish writer, and his work, especially Anam Cara, is available in Japanese, although my husband tells me the translation is a little strange, but that's okay. You can get the idea of it. So I've been making books for a long time now, for about 25, 30 years. And you can't get away from the Japanese influence in both my books and my life. What I often get as a comment when I exhibit in Japan is that wow, we can feel the Japanese influence in your work so much, but it looks nothing like anything any Japanese person would ever make. So the books I'm going to show you here, some of them are from an exhibition that I did for St. Mary's University after I finished graduate school. And when they opened a new library, they asked me if I would redo all the content of my thesis on dreams, art, and healing in the book form, but without any words. And so that's what I did. One of the obvious influences you're going to see these little white slits here? These are actually shoji. So they're reminiscent of shoji. I like to put translucent Japanese papers in my books so that light can actually come through the pages into the books. These pages are made of watercolor. And then oftentimes I will leave things in the watercolor on a very hot day like we had last week, and then put pressure on them, put plastic and lots of layers of weights on top so that the images leave an impression on the surface in the same way that when we live in another culture, we are impressed by. We have impressions left in us that get actually dyed into the fabric of our being, and that we can't remove them later on. So even when they seem to be just fleeting moments, they actually leave the impression. So the lines you see on this one, if you can see my cursor, you see a lot of lines there. They were created by putting cheesecloth on top of it. And then the actual cheesecloth then is in the shoji window here in the book. So I call it a shoji window, but it's a translucent window in a book. So these books are all about the experience of trying to catch dreams. This one, called The Mystery of Dreams, is taking an accordion book structure, which is a very, very traditional Japanese and Chinese structure of folding the book and having it spread out like that. But like many foreigners who've lived in Japan a long time, we don't quite do things the same way. So I found that I ended up reversing the folds halfway through and making a cut in what would have been an ordinary Japanese book, but having to bend the other direction. And I'm sure many of you who have the experience of living between cultures know that there's parts of you that get cut open, that our hearts get opened in bigger ways, our minds get open in different ways, and we can't go back on that. And then we are sometimes forced to bend over backwards the other way to fit in or make it work. And yet when we put it all together, we create this new form that doesn't look anything like those around us, and yet it's somehow of that place, of both places. So that's something I've been playing with as a theme for a long time in my books, is how to take what I do one direction and then just reverse the folds and have that be one book. You'll also see with these kind of yellow-green areas that in the back of it, there are translucent papers, again, to let the light in, like the shoji. You'll also notice in this piece there are puzzle pieces, and the puzzle piece has become the universal symbol for autism. So if you know anybody from the Autism Society, you'll see that oftentimes people wear a pin or a little t-shirt that has that symbol mark on it, and that means that somebody they love in their world has autism, or they're a supporter of autism. And I feel like having that missing piece with my son, the way he's not quite the same as other people, it's a bit like those of us who live between other cultures. There's some missing piece, and yet that means there's also room for a new piece to fit in. I often will take traditional structures like these boxes, which is what I made to hold this book. And when I was teaching in Japan, when I first opened Monkey Bridge, one of my favorite students I'd had for about 10 years came, and her mom had just passed away. And her mom had all the scraps from every kimono she'd ever made, and especially after World War II. Many of you know these elderly folks who have the bags in the closet of all the different pieces of beautiful fabric. Well, this is kasuri, and kasuri, if you don't know it, is a kind of ikat weaving where the thread is dyed at intervals, and then when it's woven together, you get this beautiful pattern that shows up. It's often the handiwork of women, unknown women doing this beautiful work. Well, I couldn't throw it away either, so I've taken all those scraps over the years that everybody started giving me when their parents would pass away, and making them into the covers for my books and the boxes. This one is called Dream Meanderings, and meander is when you're trying to take a walk somewhere and it goes like this. So instead of going straight from point A to point B, it's more like the way life is, that journey, that it moves all around. Well, a meander book is a wonderful structure that I'll show you how, well, if we have time, I'll show you a little bit about that today. But it's a one-page book where you can fold it up and it opens up like what's called a codex, a regular book where the pages go like that. I probably have, I have one right here. Okay. So it can open up like this, but it can also open up like an accordion, or it opens up like this and can be reassembled. So this is very important because this is a book that I used, a structure I taught after the great earthquake and tsunami that I'll tell you about afterwards. But oftentimes when we're making books, we think about not only what is the content that I want to put in the book, but how does the shape of the book interact with the content? So what is the shape of today's story that I want to contain in a book? Is it something that goes very much one page after another? Is that bending inside and outside part of the story? Can I express that without having to put words in? So this is a painting using my calligraphy brushes and strokes, but no longer having a calligraphy teacher. I was able to live with my calligraphy teacher for 2 years in the 70s. But after that, when I came back to the United States and then later moved to Europe, I didn't have any access to anybody to teach me anymore. So I continued to use the brushes and I continued to use watercolors and inks and tried to remember what my teacher had taught me about posture and breath and the relationship of the brush to the paper, all of that. But I could no longer make the words with characters because I had nobody to teach me that. And so this is a book that's about that. It's built up in 3 layers of color, and it's created with painting with layers with wax, and then putting watercolor and painting on top of that, and eventually removing the wax. And so you get 3 layers of watercolor on top of each other. That gives you another view of it. Always there's washi and then handmade European paper. I'm always trying to bring the worlds together. This is a book called Eumeology. So I'm also a dreaming and nightmare expert, and I bring that together with my art. And my mentor for years has been a woman named Patricia Garfield, and her book, Creative Dreaming, was the first book that made it to the general public after Freud and Jung's work on dreaming. And when it got translated into Japanese, they created a new word, Eumeology, for her book, and that was in the title. So this is a book in honor of Patricia Garfield. Now you'll notice here is a very short, small accordion in the spine. So that's like a Japanese accordion book. But in that accordion, each section is sewn in by hand as you would with a Western book. So I'm always trying to put the Western and the Eastern together to create new books that can hold my stories. And then there are these translucent shoji-like windows. And also, I don't know if you can tell here, this is a hidden door on this page with the little, on the far right, with that little sash, and that you pull to open it up. So I find going between cultures, there's always secret hidden places. Sometimes I just can't figure out how to do something, and then all of a sudden I find the door opens with the help of somebody else. So this gives you a little better look of the interior of this book. And the writing you see inside there are dreams. So those are dreams that I've printed out and put in between the pages. This is another one called Brush with Dreams, and it just shows you an example again of how this time I'm taking book cloth that I made and mixing it together. On the outside there's Japanese cloth, and on the inside there's Western cloth. Very much the way we all live our lives, those of us who go between worlds. This is one that I'll be teaching in my upcoming online class. It's called a flag book. And in this book, it has an accordion spine, and you'll see that in a minute. And then each of these little flags or these little flaps are put in there. And I think you can all see my speaker view too still, right? So these are put in like this, but then when the book opens, it goes like this. So the pages do this, and I'll show you what that looks like inside. So you can see here's the short accordion. On the back of it, the black paper is going in a zigzag. And then on each mountain fold, there's a flap that's coming out from each direction. Does that make, I hope that makes a little sense. It makes much more sense when you take a class with me or come to my studio, but we can't do that these days. So anyhow, just enjoy that it's like this. It's doing this. It's really interesting. It's so much fun to make this. It looks really complicated, but like all Japanese paper arts, if you just do one step after another step and you're careful about that step, it's not that hard. But if you decide to get wild and free and do whatever you want and cut it a different shape, by the third step, you're just going to be totally mixed up. And this is another example of a visual journal that I've made where I've been doing experiments with a Japanese approach to using watercolor, but using it in very non-traditional ways and with acrylic as well on these papers. Now, another way that I use my teaching and my, let's see, did I skip something? No. Another way that I use my teaching is every year I go to Japan and I stay there for about 3 months. I take people with me for an in-depth immersion into the culture and working with artists there. And then I teach in the schools. And this is at the Chiba Vocational Arts High School in Chiba Prefecture, in the northern part of the prefecture. The vice principal, after the great earthquake and tsunami, asked me if I would come up there because although those kids weren't in the disaster zone, the building was shaken really badly, and all the kids had to stay in the building all night, not knowing where their parents were, where their family was. They weren't getting contact. And so the building was shaking so bad that the principal told everybody to go down to the sports field in front of the school. But then they kept getting tsunami warnings, so they had to go back up to the roof. And so this went on all night. And of course, as was true in many parts of Japan, it wasn't just in the disaster zone where people were affected by the experience. However, as happens in any place in the world, there's a lot of survivor guilt and a lot of the feeling that we didn't lose everything, so we're fine. You put all the resources into the people who really need it up in the disaster zone. But these kids still needed to process where they were that day and what happened that night. So the vice principal asked if I would come in and indirectly work with their dreams, because many people after natural disasters, after any event, like after the George Floyd killing in the Twin Cities, have intense dreams and they don't know what to do with them. And the majority of licensed professionals in psychology and medicine, nursing, none of them teaching, none of them have any background in how to work with dreams. So I came in as the book artist because, as many of you know, in Japan, coming in as a therapist or a psychologist would put people on the defensive. They would not necessarily want to open up about that. So we made books, and I asked the kids, what was the shape of the story for your experience that day? Where were you that day of the earthquake? And so, as I mentioned, that meander book was the structure that most of them picked because it falls apart. Everything started out looking like it was a normal day, and suddenly it flipped direction. And then suddenly everything changed. And parts of their life that they thought were intact suddenly came apart. So afterwards, kids started cutting them up and making their own examples. This is a picture from a class I taught at not a nursery school, a grade school in Urayasu that I go back to every year. And the kids were having a lot of nightmares. So I had them all draw pictures of their nightmares, and then they shared dreams with each other. This girl here in the front here, she was having a dream about, you can see these blue stairs that are going down deep, about this kind of wall of water that she was going down. And at the bottom was a house with a wicked witch in it that was going to devour all the children. The girl behind her was having a dream about a strawberry cake, and she was on the top of a strawberry cake. Well, the teachers were all like, the kids are just fine. There's no problem here. I mean, strawberry cake, what's the problem? So when they were sharing the dreams, I asked the child, tell me about your painting here. What are you thinking about? And she says, oh, this dream is so scary. I'm on top of the highest strawberry cake and I can't get down. I can't find my mom. So I asked her, where were you on the day of the earthquake? She was upstairs in their apartment building. I think it's about the 12th floor in Urayasu. Her mom had gone out to buy strawberry cake. They used to have that snack in the afternoon. And then the earthquake started, and she couldn't figure out where her mom was. She's 5 years old, 6 years old here. She was terrified. And so for her, that reoccurring image of what should have been a sense of security with mom and the strawberry cake became the image that the dream latched onto for the nightmare. So the kids said just by drawing the dreams and being able to act them out and play and share them with each other, they started to relax a bit. And it was an important tool that they could use for themselves for healing. Another group up in Ishinomaki, which you probably know up by Sendai, where everything washed out to sea, asked me if I would come up with the head librarian at the time from the Urayasu Library. They said to my friend Akemi Ito, we'd like to have you come because all of the buildings now have been cleaned away. This was 1 year after the disaster. And before the new buildings are built, this is when the new stories will come that will become the myths of the future. So you need to come and start collecting stories. And this group had done a lot of work with her before with collecting old stories in the region. So they invited me to come too. And we spent the day when we got together. Oops, sorry, I don't have it there. We spent the day sharing stories about where everybody was the day of the earthquake. And then we got together and we got a ryokan room together and we slept and dreamed together for the night. And the next morning we woke up and shared our dreams. And everybody had really scary dreams. They were quite intense. But when we worked with them as if they were a communal dream, they were so surprised. Like one of the dreams was a woman dreamt she was in a large stadium and she was the one who had to decide the people who could live and the people who would die in there. And she was very efficient at her job, but she felt guilty about this, that she survived. And another woman dreamt about her house was so incredibly filthy, she had no idea where to begin to start cleaning up. And so as we worked these dreams, we found other messages in them. Like the woman with the dream about the dirty house said, you know, what I really need to do is just take some rest. I don't need to clean up everything right away. It's okay to start taking care of myself. And the other one who had the stadium dream realized nobody chose to be in this position of surviving or dying, but we are just where we are. So it's okay to move on. So that was very powerful. If you'd like to hear more about that, please watch my TED Talk on YouTube. You'll find it and you can hear the whole story there with the dreams. So the name of the talk is Dreaming on Purpose. And it was with Gustavus, which I'm a graduate of, Gustavus Adolphus. So that's where I tell the whole story about the dreaming in Japan. So to close this little bit of the presentation, I just want to invite you, if you have an interest in studying with me, I do offer online courses now, as we all do since COVID. The next one is going to be on color and dreams, and we're going to work with dreams through the book arts and creative writing. So that cool book I showed you with the flaps like that, that's the book we're going to make. And we'll do some color studies on those little cards. And then as we do that, we'll learn about the role of color and dreaming. And I'm very excited to say that today, Bob Haas, the president of the Dream Science Foundation, saw my advertisement about it, and he wrote to me saying, can I please be a presenter for your class, because he is the world's expert on color and dreams. So he will be coming along and doing a little presentation during that. So let's try making some books ourselves and see what that's like.
Sheila-san,
yeah.
Couple things. So
right.
Can we share your YouTube link to the participants?
Oh, please do. Absolutely. That'll make it easier than making them remember anything now.
Yeah, we will send them that. And also we will share your class information as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And also there's a question. What education or training did you go through for the teaching that you do?
For the teaching, okay. So I have degrees in fine arts, East Asian studies. I finished the equivalent of major in Japanese a couple months after I finished college. I did intensive work at Middlebury's Summer Japanese Institute. And then I did my master's degree in human development. Now, there is no master's or PhD in the areas I work in. So at St. Mary's University, I was able to create my own degree around art, dreams, and healing. And the result of that was, after I finished my thesis and my final research project, I submitted it to the International Association for the Study of Dreams, which produces the only academic journal devoted to dreaming and a humanities journal. And it's the umbrella organization for everything with dream studies internationally. And I won the International Research Award for the most original work in graduate studies. And then after that, because there's no PhD in the field, I went on to work with Robert Bosnak, who was trained by James Hillman and Carl Jung, if you know those names at all. And I did his 3-year postgraduate intensive training in what's called embodied imagination work, which is a very rigorous program, equivalent probably to a PhD, in dealing with dreams, the body, and creativity. So that's my academic background. And then I've got a lot of experience, because you can tell by the white hair I'm getting older now. So about 40 years experience in the field.
So I have another question. How long have you done this art? So I'm assuming the dream related.
Oh, the dream related art? I've always done that, because I've always been a vivid dreamer, and I found it was so much more efficient and fun to work on something really hard during the day. And then before I went to bed, write in my notebook, well, what's the next step? How do I solve this problem? And then when I wake up, I just leave an hour to write and draw, and all the answers were there. And I found out, oh, it's really easy to get through college that way. If I just go to sleep every day on time, and I sleep enough, and I wake without an alarm clock, I always have the answers, so I could write my papers every morning. And I didn't realize that most people don't do that. And I'm like, why do you make it so hard for yourself? And now, later I found out with the research, scientists have various opinions about the function of dreaming, but two that they absolutely agree on, regardless of their persuasion, is that dreams are our most emotional state of consciousness. So that's where we integrate what's going on with us emotionally. So right now during COVID, everybody has a new jumble of emotions that perhaps we didn't have before the reality of pandemic was here, right? So we're having a lot of intense dreaming, and we're processing it in the dreaming. But the other function of dreams is to consolidate learning. So that's where what we learn today is connected to other learning experiences from earlier and earlier in the lifespan. And then it plays out in new scenarios to kind of give us an idea to try out this new learning we did. For example, if you were riding your bike and you slipped and you fell and you almost got hurt in a car accident, maybe a car almost hurt you. So that would be very emotionally powerful, right? And it was really dangerous. So the dreams would first start connecting that with other experiences where maybe you slipped up, where maybe you fell off your high horse, where maybe you tumbled down some stairs as a little kid, where maybe you were learning to roller skate and slipped. But then it will start showing you over time also where you develop mastery. And the dreaming is where we practice a lot of skills before we do it in waking life. So maybe it will have you replay that scene, but then you learn how to move like this and get around it. And eventually you find a situation comes up in waking life and you can respond because you've been practicing in the dreams. So it's absolutely essential to our learning to get 4 to 6 cycles of dreaming per night. If you don't, you won't retain your knowledge. And anybody who has stayed up all night to cram for a test knows this.
Mm.
If you want to retain what you're learning, go to sleep, take a nap, and then go back and review it. And then have fun, because learning is fun.
So I've been doing things right then, because, I
Yeah.
know a lot.
Sleep in. Okay,
But,
so
yeah.
can we move on to making something? Because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm hoping that since all of you have a connection with Japan, maybe doing paper folding is not going to overwhelm you as much as my totally raw audiences who don't know how to do any of that. So I'm going to turn on my cool document camera here. And if you want to follow along, please do. Just get this.
Yeah, and then if we can all see you do this together, that would be super awesome. So that
Well, and you know what, Rio, if you like, I can send you a video of how to do this and then how to do many variations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can post that. And it's a video I made for my online class, so that'll make it more fun. So if any of you have paper folding anxiety, don't worry. You'll be able to watch the video later. Okay, so I have oops, this one's too long for the screen. Okay, I've got a piece of paper here, you probably have an 8.5 by 11 one or A4. And what we're going to do is we're first going to turn it the vertical way, the tall way, okay, like this. And then we're going to fold that in half. Now, if you get into the book arts, I have this handy dandy tool called a bone folder. It's absolutely fabulous, and I use it all the time for origami now. I use that to help make my crease better, but that's the advanced class. Okay, and then once you've got that, open it up, and we're going to rotate it. So for those of you who are not used to doing paper things, stick your finger in the middle. That's rotate. Especially when I'm teaching online, I found out I can't see anybody's hands, so I have no idea what you do, and people come up with the most spectacular ways to make that one move in a new way. Yes, exactly. So you want to have it so you have the valley facing up, and it's now horizontal. I'm just going to grab a sip of tea for a moment. Okay, now we're going to fold it in half again, the other direction. And in the States, when I'm teaching at for kids, we call this the hamburger bun way. It's kind of like a hamburger bun. Fold it in half again. And then you're going to take the top and fold that back to the fold here. Okay, everybody with me still? Now, take it and lift it up and then turn it over, okay? All right, now you should have one layer on top and fold that back. And you should all have two pieces of paper, right? So let's try that one more time. Set this one aside. We'll use that in a moment. And let's try it one more time to make sure you've all got this. Okay, so vertically, we're going to fold it the hot dog bun way. Because we do have some kids here, so they like that image. This is like a hot dog bun. I'm going to open that up again. Rotate it like a clock. And now fold it the other direction. Of the cameras that are on, nobody looks panicked yet, so I'm feeling good about this. Now we're going to take the top layer over to this fold, over to the edge here, line that up and fold that. Okay, and once you've got that, pick it up and turn it over and then fold the top layer back again. So if you open it up, it should look like this. You should have two mountains and a valley with a fold also in the center. Is that what yours looks like? If not, refer to the video I'll be making. Okay, so now what we're going to do is open that up again. And we're having it the vertical, the horizontal way, right? I'm going to fold this over in half again. And then I'm going to turn it so that this fold faces me and this is open at the top, okay? I'm going to draw in here. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to draw so you can see. So you should be able to feel with your finger that there's a fold here and there's a fold here, right? So that intersection down to this fold, okay? So not where it's open, but here where it doesn't open. We're going to cut that. So just watch me do it once first, and then you will do it with me, okay? So I'm going to cut along that line. Okay, and then I have it, it can do this. So everybody go ahead and cut that. If you don't have scissors, if you crease it really hard, you can rip that. Everybody good? All right, now this fold here, we're going to pick it up and we're going to put it down on the table like this. So we have one mountain and then these two planes going out, and then the cut is in the center here, okay? Now here comes the magic part. I'm going to grab that, lift it up, and then we're going to fold it over like that, okay? I'll do that again for you. So I put it on the table like this. Okay, everybody good? Ben, you look a little worried. Can you see what we're doing? Yeah? Let me see if your screen is on and you look worried, I can deal with that. The rest of you are blank screens to me, so you'll have to figure it out. Okay, so I'm picking it up, I'm lifting it up, and I'm folding it like that. And then on the top here, I'm going to crease and crease. So it should look like this from the top. Is that what yours looks like? Okay, and you'll notice you have two parts here that I can stick my finger in and there's a fold, and then two parts that are open here, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab one of these sides that has a fold on the outside, this open one, I'm gonna grab that. Then I'm gonna take the other three and bring them together. Okay, so the other three, bring them together. And I'm going to put that down on the table. So this side, the right side here, has 3. This has 1. And I'm going to crease, don't touch this side yet, the left side, but I'm going to crease everything else so that lies nice and flat. Okay, and so this is a professional bookmaker. I'm showing you how to be really careful, but you guys like Japan, so you're used to that. But if you do it carefully here, you're going to get a beautiful book. Then I'm going to take this side now and I'm going to gently fold it over, and you're going to notice it's going to buckle a little because it's going around all the other pages. Crease the spine first, this outside part. Then take your hand over like this and crease the other, and it should all line up then really beautifully. Does yours line up? And remember, the first 100 are not as nice as the second 100. So be gentle with yourself. And voila, you should have this super cool book, right?
Magic.
Right, so what we're going to do, the top of it is the part that has the 2 folds, okay? So you should have the 2 folds on top. If you have all of it open, it falls open. So we want to make sure you have these 2 on the top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write on the front here, Magic Book. And this is called an X book.
Sheila-san. I got one question.
Yes.
It says, is there an advantage to folding side to side rather than bottom up? I usually lean over and fold to the top edge. I think my folds are more precise that way, but not sure if birds think
what I notice is when I'm folding, I go from the center up, down, and I do find that is better. If I go from the top, and especially down here it's open, it tends to splay. It tends to spread out. So it depends on what it is you're doing. You know, like with origami too, there are ways of folding different things depending on how many layers in the situation. But I do find that for these ones, like folding the spine first and then coming over like this and then changing the position of this fold is better. But that's getting like super nerdy. Don't let that inhibit you yet. Let's all just have fun. And then if you want to talk, you know, down and dirty about books, let me know. We can do that. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the cover. Then inside we're going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then back cover. This is your sample. We always keep a mock-up when we're doing any kind of a book, because once you get into the flow, verbal logic, paying attention to numbers, it's not going to happen. You want to have something in your hand so you know which way is up. So what's really cool about this book is if you open it, you'll see there's a kind of place where you can play peekaboo in there. You can tell your story, have the public story, and inside you can have a painting or a drawing or a map of the answer. You can have tatemae honne, you know, the real story, the public story. So this is very fun about this structure. You'll also notice that everything is on one side. So if you've heard of something called zines, little self-published magazines, this is a very popular structure because you can lay this out as long as you keep the pages in this order and this direction, then you can take it to a copy machine once you've done it. So I challenge you all, if you are the person who writes an annual letter, or even instead of nengajo, you know, New Year's card, send a little book. It's easy and it's really therapeutic and calming. And I guess COVID might be here still this winter. So sitting down with folding, having a pile of them, it's very satisfying and it's fun. Okay, so we have one more of these, right? Let's see if you remember how you just did that first cut. So we're going to open this one up again so that you have the two lines, and we're going to draw, I'm going to draw a line here to show you. That's what you cut last time, okay? So see if you can cut that again and make it, don't fold it, just cut this one because I'm going to show you a variation then. Okay, so we have that cut, right? Same that you did before. And then I want you to open it up and you'll see that that cut is right in the center of the paper, right? And we are going to extend that cut down one more square, okay? So I'm going to cut it all the way now. And this book is called a pants book. Can you see why? I like to call it the noren book. So it's like the noren in Japan, the curtains in front of the doors. Okay, so does everybody have something that looks like this, like pants? Yay, there it is. Okay, so now the rule is don't change the folds. So the first fold is a valley, right? So let's fold that one up and this one up, okay? Then the next fold is a mountain. So that means I'm going to fold this one under. And then the last one is a valley. So I'm going to fold it all up. Okay. Now this is where the tricky part comes. If I try to fold it this way, it's too bulky. And you'll notice if you just gently do that, it pushes, right? So you always want to fold in the direction with the least amount of pages. So if I go backwards, it's just one layer. If I go forward, it's 6 layers. Okay, so go backwards, fold that. Now this one, I love this one. We've got an accordion book now, but there's this weird thing in the middle, kind of like me in Japan. Look at that from the top. There's a wall. What the heck? So if I'm reading this as a story, I'm open, and now I can put like a secret answer in here. Or I could glue this shut and make a pocket. Or I could cut out a hole in here, put some translucent paper here and have a window. So when you have an interesting thing like that, there's any number of things you can do with that. I could cut a door and open it up, right? But the way that this one goes upright is that this has to have a fold on top, because remember, if the fold is on the bottom, it's going to fall open. So I want the fold on top. Now, if you want it to be a Japanese book going this way, then this is your cover. If you want it to be read like a Western book, then this is your cover. And we're going to put on the front here, pants book.
Sheila-san.
Yeah?
Could you do it over from maybe, I don't know when I got this message, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay, I'll do it from the beginning. How's that? Okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, so this is the kind of fast forward. So I'm here with 2 mountains, 1 valley, horizontal. Okay? I'm just ignore the cuts. I'm folding it over in half, folding it back, and then back. So we have this business. Then I'm opening it up so it's vertical, folded in half this way. And if whoever it is who wrote in the message, if you're panicking now, send Rio a note really quick. Okay, then from here, we're gonna just cut this inner part first. So snip, 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 snip. Okay. Then I'm going to open it up. And I'm also going to cut this part. So you could actually, from the beginning, I just wanted to show you what you already knew. You could just open it up and cut straight down 3. Okay, that's not a problem. The main point is you have to leave a connection. You have to stay connected somewhere. Otherwise, you have what's called 2 pieces of paper. Okay. So here, you keep that connection. Then folding up, folding back, folding up. Good. Are we good? Okay. Then gently lift it up and fold it back. Does everybody have that? Is that the magic one that gets you messed up? So with all the pages on top, see, here they are, pum, 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 pum. Holding it down, then back. Got it?
No message right now, so I think we're good.
Okay, so now on the cover, pants book, because you want to know what this is so you can come back to it. Page 1, 2. This is telling me the direction for when I do layout on my computer or when I cut and paste. Remember cut and paste when it actually took scissors and glue? 3, 4. Now here's the tricky part. We don't put anything on the inside here, okay? Because we're treating this all as one page. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, back cover. Now, this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. We just had the same amount of folds. We simply cut one more space and we now have 8 pages, not 6. Why is that? Isn't that interesting? Magic, magic. Let me show you why. So here we have all the pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But voila, back cover and front cover on the other side. So if you want to do an edition of this, you have to be very good at advanced copy machine skills and be able to print on both sides. That's the trick. So the big trick to it is don't make your design go all the way to the edges. Keep your design within this space. Then even if your printer at home is a little funky or if your copy machine is a little strange, you will still be able to be on the page and it'll line up enough. If you go right to the edges, that's very hard to line up very precisely with a copy machine. Okay, so this one is a 2-sided printing. And then see, follow the folds as you go back. And if you get confused, just remember, don't fold into where there's lots of pages, fold where there's only 1 page. And you've got it. Cool, right? An accordion book with a wall. Imagine that. So in the video I'm going to share with Rio, I'll take you through 2 other books that are also based on the same folding, but you cut in a different place and everything changes. And for those of you who know origami, 1 fold in a different direction changes everything. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my camera here and just say, wasn't that fun? I mean, books are magical. Books changed the history of mankind with the invention of paper in China and then later the refinement of it in Japan and the invention of the local press to be able to do printing. Education was able to now go to commoners like all of us. I'm presuming none of you here are royalty. I could be wrong. If I am, I'm so sorry. But none of us, the women certainly, would have been able to get an education without folds and printing. This revolutionized life. So even in this digital age, please don't lose your sense of excitement and awe over the structure of the book and everything that it can do. That's what the book arts are about. We are all about all the art forms that go into the creation of a book. And we believe that, you know, paper making. Oh, Pam Uchida. Osaka, yes. A master knitter. You should have her speak to your group, Rio. So anyhow, she's down there in the corner. I'll tell her to stay after we finish. But thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can send me emails or ask Rio, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. It was great. I actually do have a book, but I only wrote like pants on it. So I'm like, pants, what? So we are recording this, and then also Sheila-san, we are recording this, so we can actually share this video. So anybody there who got lost, we will share this again so that you can watch it again. So that will be fantastic. And again, thank you very much, Sheila-san. If you don't know, because I am muting everybody, so in sign language, this is the applause. So we can all see applauding, AKA jazz hands. So thank you so much. And again, we are doing more events like this with the different topics. We are planning on having Aikido. What else we're planning? It's like my head is blank right now. But yeah, people are commenting, Sheila-san, they had so much fun. It was fun and cool, and people are thanking you. So thank you.
Well, just put it out there, Rio. If you're interested, I'm more than happy to teach a bookmaking class about orihon, folded books, east and west for JASM. Just let me know if you want to do that.
All right. Now we'll talk. We'll talk, definitely. And again, in order for us to keep having events like this, if you can support us or become a member, that will be wonderful. And thank you again. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Have a good night.